So to get to £4 million across my e-commerce businesses, or I think it's 4.5 million now, without ever having to invest more than a few £1,000s at the beginning, was amazing. But now we're close to like £7 million across all of my online businesses. And the whole thing was possible from just a laptop because I invested in myself towards building my skills to allow me to replicate that process.
There will be something in the headlines at this time that's dominating the headlines, and it can lead you to feel uncertain with a fear of the future and the fear of the unknown. So this will apply no matter when you're listening. So I'm keen to dive straight into this today. So obviously we're living in uncertain times, and launching a business can be daunting no matter what time you're looking to launch a business, especially if we feel uncertain. So how can high-ticket dropshipping as a business model provide a solution for entrepreneurs who are going about it in this current climate of uncertainty?
Well, the current climate of uncertainty is just a snapshot in time, right? But if you go back over the last few years, and we've been running this business now for several years, I've seen the patterns emerge time and time again where something dominates the headline that shakes people, and they fear that that event means that they can't now start a business because they've seen X, Y, Z happening on the news. We all know what happened in 2020. There were huge changes to the world, but certain businesses still thrived during that time. We know what happened with Brexit, right? We heard about Brexit, and whatever side of that you fall on, the implications were huge about like what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty. What's going to happen post-Brexit? Same with, remember when the Suez Canal ship blocked all the transport through from the Far East, and it led people to all of these supply chain problems are going to mean that we have to, like, now's definitely not the right time to start a business. So you can see these patterns emerging again and again. Someone new gets elected and there's this political instability that causes people to fear whether it's the right time to start a business. More recently, it's been things like wars starting, or AI, and the ethics regulation around AI that's in the headlines at the moment, or recessions, or the cost of living crisis. There's just an endless stream of these kind of media headline dominating events that do what they are intended to do, which is grab your attention and oftentimes just make you fearful to the point where you're kind of paralyzed to make any action. So what we want to talk about today is how you can build a business despite what's happening in the media at this time. We've tried to make this episode as future-proof as possible because we can't predict what the next headline-grabbing event will be, but there will be something. That's just the way that the media operates, right? So we want to go through how you can build a resilient business model so that throughout uncertain times, you have a stable source of income, right? So we know that the road ahead is going to be bumpy. So we want to build a business that's like the all-terrain vehicle, the off-roader, right, that can get us over the rocky road and through those bumpy, windy turns. And so we want to break that down in today's episode. And we are oftentimes will get asked by community or people considering joining us at Dropship Unlocked, is it a bad time? I remember in 2020, people were saying, I should probably just wait, right, until this is over before doing it. But I saw people start in what could have been argued was the worst time to start a business, who are today absolutely thriving because their business is rocketed during that time. So I think it's a topic that we can dive into. But I think the nice thing about it is that with this type of business model, you can start without requiring a huge amount of capital. We're talking about a business here that you could start with just £5,000 instead of £50,000, for example.
So straight away, even in uncertain times, with this business model, there's a lot less of a capital outlay initially to get started, which is going to make you feel a lot less risky and a lot less risk being taken on at that time when you first get started. I'm sure it was a uncertain time when you started your e-commerce journey, Lewis. How did you get started?
Well, yeah, I don't remember specifically what the headlines were at the time that I started, but yeah, absolutely, I agree that there must have been something there that would have been very, very easy to just put in as an excuse as to why I wouldn't start. So you can either decide to tune that stuff out, like I talk about in previous episodes where I didn't listen to the news. I went on an information diet, to use the Tim Ferriss terminology, and limit the inputs coming in because I needed to focus on output. If I was going to build a business that would allow me to become location independent and then eventually grow to the point where we could sell it one day, then I needed to focus on output. So I think the benefit when you first start of having just a few £1,000s saved up, so I was in a job, I'd saved up some money, but I didn't have hundreds of thousands of pounds. I maybe had, 5, 10 grand, something like that to my name. What it does is it lights a fire. because you have limited resources. Therefore, you have to act very cautiously, frugally, and carefully with those resources. But that was my advantage at the time. If I had had lots of money, the temptation is you just throw some of that money at buying a business. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, because they think, oh, I'll just buy a business that's already working. But then what happens when it doesn't quite function the way you want it to? Or what happens when you want to improve it? You then have to figure stuff out yourself. Now, what's the best way to figure stuff out yourself? Well, it's to learn the ropes by doing, right? So it's actually creating it from scratch initially that is your advantage. I did most things myself, with the exception of like getting a basic logo built online for £5-10, using free themes on Shopify. But initially, all the customer service emails, things like that for my first stores, I was doing myself. So I think that the best thing that you can invest in when you are at that point and you have, say, £5,000 to £10,000, and you're looking to transition out of the 9 to 5, out of a world of work, whatever it is you're doing, or even if you are out of work and you just want to create something for yourself now and you have that kind of budget available, the temptation is to say, I'll just invest in something that returns me, a nice, easy return. And that's one way of doing it. But I think that the huge upside that people miss when they do that is neglecting the fact that if you invested that in yourself and learning the skills to create something that then built you, you can then replicate that time and time again, because you yourself have the skills at that point to then do it. And I mean skills in terms of selecting markets to go into, building stores, running ads, hiring a customer service team, like these types of things that are not like you just learn it from a quick YouTube video. You kind of have to learn it by doing it, by going through the process. And so I think that's the most valuable set of skills that you can learn, because if you can do that and become adaptable, then whatever the market fluctuations are at that time, whatever is happening in the world, you have those skills that you can then overlay on the framework of or the landscape of whatever is happening in the world at that time. So to get to £4 million across my e-commerce businesses, or I think it's 4.5 million now, without ever having to invest more than a few £1,000s at the beginning, was amazing. But now we're close to like £7 million across all of my online businesses. And the whole thing was possible from just a laptop because I invested in myself towards building my skills to allow me to replicate that process, right? So I think people underestimate, like if I had taken the £3,000, right, initially and said, I'm just going to buy a business, or £5,000 or £10,000, I'm going to go and buy a business, I don't think I would have grown that £10,000 to £7 million in sales over the last 6 years or so, right? I think that the huge asymmetric returns on the upside came from investing in myself and constantly being willing to adapt and evolve to get to that point. So it's a slightly different way of viewing things, I think.
Yeah, I think the key point there is that an investment in yourself is going to be able to fluctuate no matter what the market is doing. You'll always have those skills that no one can take away from you, no matter what's going on around the world. And with those skills, you can go out and create businesses or take on different roles because you've got those skills that you will always have. So by investing in yourself, that's the surefire way of being able to deal with any uncertainty that happens around the world.